so, we're going to be starting our skirt version 3, and this will be the final one in our skirt series. So, we're going to be doing samples of the new techniques, new sewing techniques. So this one is the straight waistband 2-piece with invisible zipper that goes to the top of the waistline with an extension. Okay, and I make it detailed like that so you can actually list it in your technique binder, so you know exactly what the garment would look like when it comes to the waistband. Okay, and so these were the templates that I was telling you about that you can Google it. Just get a skirt template, make up your own, very easy to do. I recommend whenever you're making up templates is to use like a child size. Really get the real garment and just outline it. And I tend to like children's sizes 4 and 5 because it's not that big, but it's not that small either. So it's like a nice amount that you'll be working with. And so this is the skirt front. It's cut 1 unfold, and this is the skirt back 2. And so it already has the seam allowance in there. You don't have to have that. Sometimes I recommend that you don't have that to make up your own seam allowance, because typically I don't have a 1/4 waistline seam allowance. I usually have a 1/2 inch. But because this template has a 1/4, I'm just going to use a 1/4. But like I said, when you make up your own, you can do that part later. And so just to give you a little thing, when I'm doing samples, I don't really sew the dart unless it was the dart sample. But for this one, what I do is just take snips of where it is here. So you can probably see I snipped the dart legs. See if I can get it. Snips. It really is cuts in there, people. Kind of hard to see, but it is snips where the dart legs corresponded. Those two corresponded, and what I'll do is I'll just pinch them together and sew them together to close it, basically doing a pleat in a sense. I'm just bringing the 2 dart legs together and sewing across it to close it, instead of doing the complete dart when I'm doing a sample. Just saves time. Okay, and we already did a straight waistband, so you know what that is. So I was just showing you, I have not finished. This was just I'm showing you that this is the zipper allowance, because the zipper allowance here is 3/4. Now remember, I usually like a 1 inch zipper allowance, but here this sample is a 3/4, so I made the sample on the waistband 3/4 as well for the zipper allowance on one side, and then on the other side, my extension is actually 1 inch, where the zipper came all the way up to the top of the garment. We just had the same amount on both sides, right? But because the zipper here, it doesn't come to the top of the garment, it only comes to the top of the waistline, and we're creating an extension, I made a 1.5 inch extension here. Normally my seam allowance would be a 1/2 inch, like I said, but because the pattern is different, I'm going to use the pattern, and they have, like I said, I think it's 1/4, yeah, 1/4, so I'm gonna do 1/4 all the way around, and I'll come back and show you what that finished waistband looks like. Okay, just coming back, showing you what the finished waistband would look like. So on one side there is your zipper allowance, just corresponds to their zipper allowance on the sample is 3/4, This is the length of your waistband. The extension, which is a 1 inch, and then the seam allowance all the way around up to that zipper allowance there is 1/4 of an inch. I marked the center front. I did not mark the side seams. Feel free to do that. I just didn't do that with this one. Center backs is at the extension side, and at seam is zipper allowance side as well. I'm not sure if I mentioned, I just want to say this again, even if I did it. This is the straight waistband, which is a 2-piece with an invisible zipper going to the top of the waistline. Not the waistband, but the waistline, and it has an extension. Okay. And with these, just to make a shortcut, since it's a sample, all I did was snip the dart legs on the fabric itself. And what I'll do is I'll pinch them together and sew across them to close the dart. I won't actually sew the dart itself. That's just to save time. Again, but I just want to stress that with your waistband that has an extension, on your extension side, you will have an allowance all the way around, okay? Whatever your allowance will be. You know, mine is usually a 1/2 inch, but because this pattern, their line seam allowance at the waistline is only 1/4, I just made it a 1/4. So you'll have your extension all the way around, your seam allowance all the way around your extension, but when you get to the zipper allowance, you will not, because your zipper allowance is your allowance from your center back. That's just what we already allotted for your zipper, so you don't need to add anything to that itself. Okay, so that's what your waistband should look like. Go ahead and cut out your sample fabric pieces. Sew up the darts. If you want to sew the darts, feel free. If not, just pinch them and sew across. And from that point, what I want you to do is, if you want, install an invisible zipper. It will make it more realistic if you do. I probably won't, just to save thing. I'll probably just make a pretend zipper or something like that. But feel free to go ahead and do that. And from there, I'm trying to think in my head, from there, you want to join fronts to back with right sides facing, and I want you to sew along your side seams to join it, and then I'll meet you back here when all that's done. Okay, people, so I decided not to be lazy and went ahead and installed the invisible zipper, but only installed it up to the base point. So only semi-lazy. So this is the skirt front, and this is what I was telling you about, just pinching and just sewing across, okay? And center back is sewn. Installed the invisible zipper just up to, you know, the very first stitch, which is the base. And so remember, I like to use extra long invisible zipper so it is extend out the way when we're doing that. So now you want to open, and now you want to attach your waistband. And I didn't cut out my waistband, but I'm gonna do it right now. And remember to attach your waistband all the way across. Okay, so from this point you should be here, and now we're going to attach your the waistband. So you're going to leave the zipper the way it will be once shut. So meaning don't flip it out. Okay, you want to leave it as is, laying flat, as it will be shut. Okay, so you don't open it out, basically, is what I'm saying. Do not open it out. Don't open it up like we do the facing, okay? Just leave it flipped under. And attach your waistband. One side will extend over by the seam allowance, and the other side will extend over by the extension. So pin your waistband all the way around, and then sew it all the way around, okay? Okay, so I cut out my waistband, and they are faced right sides together, okay? And what we're going to do is sew along one of the long edges, the seam allowance, okay? So we want to sew it before we actually put it on to the garment itself, okay? So right sides together, sew along one of the seam allowance along the long length. And what you're going to do at that point is, okay, so what you want to do is you are securing so open up your waistband. I'm not sure if I said that. Open up your waistband, make sure that it is right sides facing, and secure, pin your waistband to your garment at the waistline, and make sure, I didn't do it, but make sure to finish the bottom edge of your waistband however you want to finish it. And moving on to the back, you would notice one, like I told you, make sure that your zipper is in its finished position, like not flipped out like we do with the facing, but in its finished position. One side will just extend by the seam allowance, okay? So here this seam allowance is a 1/2 inch. So this side, stay out the way. This side is, hold on. I want to make sure that you guys get this. This side is extending the waistband, waistband by a 1/2 inch, okay? And then this side is extending by more. So this is your extension side. So this is 1 inch that is extending. And I'm just folding it back so you can kind of see that it's extending from here, from here to here, from there to there. So that's 1 inch on that side. And then the seam allowance side is from here to here. So from here to here. So that's the extension. So now just go ahead and sew. You're going to sew over your zipper, okay? So just be careful. These are plastic, so it won't break, but still be careful at your seam allowance amount. Again, mine is a 1/4 inch, but typically it is a 1/2 inch, and on commercial patterns it'll probably even be 5/8 of inch. Okay, so just whatever that particular seam allowance is, sew along, sew over your zipper. All right, now be back when we finish that portion. Okay, now remember, I know I said it before, but I just want to stress, we sewed the 2 waistbands together with right sides together at that seam allowance along the long side, just to make your finished waistband length, okay? Turned it inside out, right side out, sorry, gave that a press. Then we opened it back up so it's flat against your waistline there. Finish the bottom edge as you see fit, zigzag, pinking, serge, or clean finish for a more traditional waistband look, okay? Okay, so back, so sewed along the waistline, the waistband to the waistline here. And remember that when you sew, you will have an extension on one side, and you would have just a regular extension, whatever that amount is, on the other side. And make sure that your zipper is in the finished position, not flipped out like a facing, but finished position. Okay, so at this point, because we have secured the zipper to the waistline, right? It's not going anywhere. We can now clip them, clip the excess zipper. Okay, do that and we'll come back. Okay, so I cut off the excess of my zipper. Okay, so cut that off. So now what you want to do is press your waistband away from your garment, keeping the seam allowance in its upright position. So everything's going to be away from the garment. And you don't have to press the whole thing, but really just along here. And you want to make sure that the seam allowance is also away from the garment. Okay, so I'm just going to flip mine up so you can see. So from this point, you're just going to be pressing, and you know, most likely you got to do it from the inside here just to make sure. So make sure that your seam allowance is toward your waistband facing at this point. And you want to make sure to press, I'm sorry. So I'm doing two things at one time. So want to make sure that you press your waistband and the waistband seam allowance up toward, or just away from the garment, okay? So just give that a good press. So this is what, turn it around so you can see. This is what everything should look like at this point. Forgot to mention, don't forget to understitch your facing to the seam allowance. So your waistband facing either one, you can start on either side to your to the seam allowance, okay? You're going to put them so that they are right sides together. Okay, so you're going to flip your waistband and your waist. So this is your waistband facing. So you want to turn them so they are right sides together, and you're going to stitch your seam allowance, which will correspond with where this zipper lines up. Okay, so the seam allowance here is 1/2 inch. Okay, no, 3/4 inch. I'm sorry, it's 3/4 of an inch. And so you're going to sew. So let me start back over. So what you're going to do is fold your waistband facing onto your waistband and right sides together. Okay, so you should already be, everything should already be pressed up, right? So you should be looking at the right side of your waistband and your waistband facing. All you're going to do is take the waistband facing and fold it onto each other. It'll be right sides together. Okay, and you're going to sew from the top to the bottom of your waistband here, top to bottom, your seam allowance, and it should, the line should run right dead with your zipper here. So my seam allowance is 3/4. So it'll run right dead into there. Then what you're going to do is trim, once you sew, trim the excess seam allowance off. Okay, so that's that one. That's the shorter side. That's the more simpler side. Okay, now let me put something to keep that out the way. Now for the extension side, should still be face up, right? Waistband facing, waistband, same thing, fold it so that it's right sides together. And all you're going to do here is make a what do you call this, a backwards L. Let me go back to this one. You see how because of this, the seam allowance kind of folds in already on the inside, it kind of folds in. I want you to fold that out. Bring that out when you sew. So everything should be lined up. Okay, so when this comes down, I want you to unfold that seam allowance in the back that kind of just wants to fold under, just because you sewed the zipper, okay, in the waistband. So just unfold it. It wants to fold under like that, just automatically. Just unfold it, okay? And honestly, if you keep it folded, it won't hurt anything. So if you forget that part, it will not hurt anything at all. So I just want to share with you that that's kind of what you do. So the same thing as you see here, because you sewed the waistband, this seam allowance wants to tuck under automatically. Get closer so you can see. Tucks in automatically because you sewed that seam allowance there. Okay, so like I said, you can keep it like that, that's fine, but it's preferred if you opened it. It just makes it look better that when you sew that you actually opened it up like that. Okay, so it'll be right sides together, and all you're going to do is make an L, and I'll actually draw it on here so you can see, and I'll do both of them too. It's hard to do it with one hand. So again, you're going to open it up, that bottom seam allowance, so it'll be flat, and you're going to sew your seam allowance. So here I think I made my seam allowance a 1/4 inch to match everything else, right? So because that top was a 1/4 inch, so I just made in the bottom here was a 1/4 inch, so I just made the whole thing a 1/4 inch. So you're going to sew this a 1/4 inch, and then you're going to go in toward your zipper and stop right at your zipper, right before your zipper. And so that's why I call it a backwards. Is that a backwards? Yeah, no, it's L. On this side, it's a L. If it was on the other side, it'll be the backwards L. But this side, it is a L shape. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put the phone down. I'm gonna pin it, and I'm actually going to draw so you see kind of where you should be sewing. Be a little bit more easier for you. Okay, so this is just the extension side where you just sew straight down, meeting basically where that zipper is. Remember to fold out that seam allowance on that folded up seam allowance on the back side, if you can remember. And then you're just going to sew straight down, and that's it for that side. And this is the extension side, so you're going to sew down and you're going to stop at the zipper. So down, pivot, go across at whatever your seam allowance is, stop at the zipper, and it makes an L if it's on this side. If it's on the other side, it'll make a backwards L. So just depending on which side you have it on or prefer it on. Okay, and this, because it's a 1/4 inch, it's not really that much to trim. Well, probably nothing to trim. You don't have to trim it. You can trim this corner right here if you like, but here most definitely just trim till you get about a 1/4 inch. Once you sew the seam, trim to a 1/4 inch, trim that off, and then trim that corner there as well. And all trimming does, remember, is just to eliminate bulk. Alrighty, do that and we'll come back. Okay, coming back from the sewing. So I sewed, a little crooked, but you know, so sewed straight down for the extension side. So the L for the extension side. I'm sorry, I think it says extension here. So seam allowance side. So straight down for the seam allowance side, okay? And on this side, sewed the L shape for the extension side. Now, what we're gonna do is clip the excess fabric, so we don't need it for excess bulk, okay? So we're gonna clip straight down here, make a little slant here. And since this is already a 1/4 inch, probably just make a slant right here. And I may be able to do it with my, partly with my rotary cutter so you can see it. Try to get it to like a 1/4 inch is ideal. Oops. And then again, I hold it on safety. All right, and then going across here, see where this connection meets the intersection? So you're just going to go across that intersection, but not at the point. So this right here is the point. You don't want to cut that because then that'll cut your thread here. So you don't cut that. So you're cutting like here. Alrighty, cutting just above that point, the tip, so it kind of makes the triangle. Okay, and so that is your point there, right? So we're going to cut across just outside that, which makes triangle. Okay, so that's how you do that. And like I said, that's already a quarter, so you don't have to really take that. So now what you're going to do is just flip everything to the right side so we can take a peek. So that's what your extension side looks like. Okay, it's just basically in line with your zipper. That's the reason why you have your zipper already in the finished position when you're doing a waistband like this with an extension. And this side creates where you can have your button or snap. So flip that one out. And most definitely use your point turners to make sure that the points are. And I definitely need a point turner here. And this is your extension side, as you can see. So again, it just extends beyond the zipper, but you need it in that finished position there. And so it would just overlap like that. And that's what that would look like. It would overlap like that. And so at this point, it's just like a facing. Just like a facing. Or no, I'm sorry, just like a facing too, but like the zipper went to the top of the garment. So you see what I mean? Where this one doesn't go to the top of the garment, it goes to the waist. It doesn't go to the top of your garment, which is here. It only goes to your waistline. So that's the difference, and it has the extension. Okay. So from this point, you finish the inside like you would normally do, and I normally stitch in a ditch. So I would press it, and typically I just serge mine. Nobody, it's pretty on the inside and nobody really looks, so it's it still looks finished on the inside. But like I said, if you want a more traditional waistband, you fold it under so it'll have whatever your seam allowance is, so it'll be a clean finish. And you can either slip stitch the inside, or you can stitch in the ditch, and you know how to do both of those. So that is your straight waistband, your straight, so it looks proper. Keep in mind, I did not slip in the ditch yet, stitch in the ditch yet, or do anything else with that. But this is the finished garment. That's what that looks like. That's a little mini skirt for probably a 3-year-old. So that's what the front looks like. That's what the back looks like, with the extension. Okay. So that's it with that. Any questions on how to do this? Feel free to ask me. I'm still looking forward to seeing anybody's or your work, whatever you guys are doing. I look forward to seeing it. Okay, so I wanted to tell you what it was, right? So this is your straight waistband with the invisible zipper, right? Going to the top of the waistline with the extension. Okay, so that's how I name it. And the other one we did was the straight waistband that went to the top, with the invisible zipper that went to the top of the garment itself. So the other one we did was just straight, did not have an extension, and the zipper went to the top of the garment itself. So that's the difference between the two. Okay, so this was the first sample we needed for version 3 of our garment, of our skirt garment in our last skirt in the skirt series. Okay, go ahead and get practicing on that one. And I will see you guys and talk to you guys later. Bye.